Picture a young man. He is 23 years old. He has schizophrenia, a condition that, at its worst, fills the mind with voices, with paranoia, with a complete dissolution of the boundary between what is real and what is not. He has been through the worst of it. He has been hospitalized, medicated, stabilized. He is, by every clinical measure, in remission. The voices have quieted. The terror has receded. He is rebuilding something, a life, a routine, a version of normalcy that people who have never experienced psychosis cannot fully appreciate the fragility of. He enrolls in a research study at one of the most prestigious universities in the United States. He trusts the doctors. He signs a form. He believes he is contributing to science that will help people like him. Then his medication is taken away. Not tapered gradually, not replaced with an alternative, not removed in a context of continuous intensive support. Withdrawn, so that the researchers can observe the return of his symptoms. So they can document with clinical precision exactly what happens when the pharmaceutical barrier between this young man and the most frightening experience of his life is removed. His name is Antonio Lamadrid. He is 23 years old. He will not live to be 24. Welcome back to the darkest experiments. Last time, we were inside the most elaborate government-funded mind control program in American history. A program that dosed its subjects without consent, destroyed its own records, and escaped full accountability behind a wall of classification. Today, we move to a different kind of institution and a different kind of failure. Not a covert intelligence program, but a publicly funded university research study. Not prisoners and unwitting members of the public, but patients. People who came to medicine seeking help, who were told they were participating in research that would benefit them and others like them, and who were not told, clearly and honestly, what that participation would actually cost. This is the story of the UCLA Schizophrenia study, and it is a story about one of the most difficult and most consequential questions in all of research ethics. The years are 1983 to 1994. The University of California, Los Angeles has a well-regarded department of psychiatry, and researchers there are conducting studies into the nature and treatment of schizophrenia, one of the most complex, debilitating, and poorly understood conditions in all of mental health. One of the central questions driving the research is this: what predicts relapse in patients who have achieved remission? When a schizophrenic patient is stabilized on antipsychotic medication, what happens if the medication is discontinued? How quickly do symptoms return? What biological and psychological markers predict the trajectory of relapse? These are legitimate scientific questions. Understanding relapse is genuinely important for developing better treatments, for identifying patients at highest risk, for improving the long-term management of a condition that ruins lives and overwhelms families and healthcare systems. The researchers designed a study to investigate it. Patients in remission were enrolled, their antipsychotic medication was withdrawn, and they were monitored through the process of relapse. The problem was not the question. The problem was the answer to a prior question that the researchers never fully grappled with. The question of whether the people enrolled in this study genuinely understood and genuinely consented to what was going to happen to them. Informed consent is the cornerstone of research ethics. It requires that participants understand what a study involves, what risks it carries, and that they freely and voluntarily agree to participate, with the right to withdraw at any time without consequence. In principle, the UCLA study obtained consent. Patients signed forms. The study was reviewed and approved by an institutional review board. All the formal checkboxes of ethical research were ticked. But consent is not merely a signature. It is a genuine, substantive understanding of what one is agreeing to. And for the patients enrolled in this study, several layers of that understanding were, at minimum, compromised. First, the forms they signed did not make entirely clear that withdrawal from medication would likely, not possibly, but likely, trigger a full psychotic relapse. The language used was technical, hedged, and incomplete, in ways that a patient without a medical background reading under conditions of institutional trust could not reasonably be expected to parse into its full implications. Second, and more fundamentally, these were patients with schizophrenia. The very condition being studied is one that can affect judgment, insight, and the capacity to evaluate risk. A patient in remission may appear fully competent and may feel fully competent, but the question of whether their consent to a procedure that will deliberately induce the return of their most disabling symptoms can ever be truly free and fully informed is one that the research team did not adequately confront. Third, patients enrolled in clinical research at a prestigious institution under the care of doctors they trusted, in a context of genuine hope that the research might help them. These patients are not in a neutral position relative to the people asking for their consent. The power differential is real. The desire to be helpful, to be a good patient, to trust the experts is real. And consent given in that context is not the same as consent given by a person with complete information, complete understanding, and no institutional pressure. Antonio Lamadrid was 23 years old when he enrolled in the study. He was, by all accounts, a young man who had fought hard to achieve the stability he had. He had reasons to live for, people who loved him, a future he was working toward. He trusted the doctors at UCLA. He believed the study was designed to help people like him. His medication was withdrawn. His symptoms returned. The voices came back. The paranoia returned. The fragile architecture of the life he had rebuilt began to collapse under the weight of an illness that he had been deliberately, intentionally returned to by the people he trusted most. He died by suicide in 1991. He was 23 years old. His mother, Maria Lamadrid, did not accept the tragedy in silence. She pursued accountability with a determination that drove the case into public consciousness and before regulatory bodies. Her advocacy was instrumental in triggering a national conversation about research ethics in psychiatric studies, about what informed consent actually means when the population giving it is one whose capacity to consent is itself a symptom of the condition being studied. Her son's death was not a statistical outcome. It was a person, and she made sure the world knew his name. The case was reviewed by the Federal Office for Protection from Research Risks, which found serious deficiencies in the consent process and the monitoring of participants. The University of California system undertook significant revisions to its research oversight procedures. New federal guidelines around research involving populations with mental illness were developed in direct response to what had happened. The researchers involved were not prosecuted. The study had, in the formal sense, passed through all the required institutional gateways. The failure was not of individual malice, it was of systemic inadequacy, of an oversight system that was measuring the wrong things, ticking formal boxes while missing the substantive question at the center of the entire enterprise. That question being, is this person, this specific human being, with this specific history, in this specific moment of hard-won stability, genuinely in a position to agree to have that stability deliberately dismantled? The answer, in Antonio Lamadrid's case, should have given someone pause. It did not. The UCLA Schizophrenia study does not fit neatly into the narrative of villainous researchers conducting experiments in defiance of all ethical norms. The researchers were not cruel people. They believed in the importance of their work. They followed the procedures available to them. And a 23-year-old man died. That gap between procedural compliance and genuine ethical responsibility is the most important lesson this study leaves behind. Following the rules is not the same as doing the right thing. Obtaining a signature is not the same as ensuring understanding. Passing an institutional review is not the same as asking whether this particular person, in this particular situation, should really be here at all. The questions the UCLA study forces us to ask about psychiatric research are difficult and have no easy answers. Research on conditions like schizophrenia is genuinely necessary. Understanding relapse is genuinely important. The people who can participate meaningfully in that research are, almost by definition, the people most affected by the condition. Excluding them entirely from research is its own ethical failure, one that condemns them to treatments developed without their participation. But genuine respect for a research participant means more than a signed form. It means sitting with the full weight of what you are asking and being willing sometimes to accept that the answer is no, that the knowledge is important, but not as important as this person. Not today, not like this. Antonio Lamadrid deserved that pause. He did not receive it. The UCLA Schizophrenia study was not a secret program. It was not conducted in a basement or funded through a network of front organizations. It was peer-reviewed, institutionally approved, and published in academic literature. It operated in full daylight. And that is precisely what makes it so important to understand, because it tells us that the protections we have built are necessary but not sufficient. That oversight can fail quietly, procedurally, without anyone raising their voice. Maria Lamadrid raised hers. She changed things. Her son's name is in the record now, not as a case number, but as a person. That matters. Next time, we close Chapter 6 with one of the strangest and most darkly absurd experiments in this entire series. A 1924 study involving jazz music, buckets of live frogs, pornographic images, and a 13-year-old boy with a kitchen knife. It is the Landis facial expressions experiment, and it will leave you genuinely uncertain whether to laugh, wince, or simply shake your head at the infinite capacity of scientific curiosity to lose its moral bearings. Subscribe so you're there for it. Leave a comment. Antonio Lamadrid's story deserves to be remembered. Tell me what it meant to you. I'll see you in the next one.